I'm Bruce Apar, and you're watching Frank Talks with Bruce the Blog. And now the credits roll, and they can't hear us, right? Right, so we told you.
Yeah. He didn't say, but
Okay, right, you figured it out.
I
Right.
figured it.
They have so much black at the beginning of the show. I have so much to go on YouTube and find out. People would go and look at it. It's like 25, 30 seconds
Really?
black.
Yeah, you should
That's why I make it like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell them that they go and they say, oh, I guess it's not there. Nothing right. It's just the way they're trimmed. Frank Talks with Bruce the Blog is brought to you by the Penny Saver and our parent company, Chase Media Group. And we thank our CEO, Carla Chase, and our Chief Strategic Officer, Frank J. Rich, for putting us up every week. If you're new to the show, we always like to let you know that Frank Talks with Bruce the Blog is a regular community affairs program where we bring you people that we feel you want to know about or are doing really interesting things in the community. And if you know somebody, including yourself, that you think would be a good guest for our audience, including you, please contact me at BAPAR, B-A-P-A-R, at chasemediagroup.com. You also can see us, all the shows that we've done for the past 2 years, on YouTube, just by searching for Townlink TV. And actually, this is June, so we've been on the air exactly for 2 years, and so far so good. So today we're going to think social and talk social with my friend Harris Decker. Harris,
How you
welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Harris, yeah, you bet. Well, needless to say, social media is all anybody seems to talk about
It's true.
lately. And Harris has a company called Think Social.
Yep.
And basically, since you graduated college,
Just about,
that's all
yeah.
you've been doing.
Yeah,
Right? I mean, well, it's not all
absolutely,
you've been doing, but I'm
yeah.
saying, as far as I guess your primary vocation, let's say.
Immersing myself in social media, if you will.
Right.
Yes.
And so, it occurred to me, I mean, I went to the Newhouse School at Syracuse, which is one of the, why they let me in is another matter, but it's one of the premier communication schools
Yeah.
In the country. And my question to you these days is, do they teach social media in college? I mean, well, at least where you attended college,
Yeah,
which
I
was
the University of Hartford,
Right.
The Hart School of Music.
Right.
I was actually a performing arts management major,
Oh.
so I studied to be in the music industry, doing
Right.
management work. At the time when I graduated, no, there was no social media program there. A lot of times now, colleges are not only putting in courses, but instituting majors and master's degrees in social media. So.
Right.
I would say when I graduated in 2010, no, most schools were not. There was a few cutting edge ones that had a few social media programs, but now it's really a part of a lot of curriculums. I mean, people are looking for social media classes when they enroll. They want, if you're
Right.
going into a business school, if you're going into a
Right.
communication school, you want, to learn about a little bit of social media, and that's really an important part of coming out into any arena now. Whether you're in business or communications, really whatever you're doing, you really need to have a grasp of that.
And one of the interesting paradoxes, let's call it, there would be, wouldn't the lecturer, presenter, professor, teacher presenting it have to be somebody relatively young, just for credibility's sake? In other words, so let's say you're in college now,
Yeah.
and you have somebody like my generation up there talking about social media. I mean, wouldn't you think? I'd even think like, well, I don't know, is this person really the right one to tell me about it?
You'd be surprised. I mean,
Right.
there are some people who, are, a little bit older who really do grasp social
Yeah.
media, because
Right.
a lot of people see it as, it's just media in a new way. It's just a new form of media. But I think really understanding it from the whole and the way it fits into someone's life, the way you use social media,
Right.
you may understand it, you may not, but grasping it on a level where you understand the way it fits into every part of your life, every second of your life,
Right.
that's something that my generation and the millennials generation has really grasped, because I know people who are a little bit younger than me who really they never knew a world without social media.
Yes,
social
right,
media has
right.
been a part of their everything they've
Right.
done, from MySpace to Facebook to Twitter now to Pinterest.
Right.
Each of these networks has sort of evolved with them,
Right.
and that has sort of made us better
Right.
at understanding it as a whole, I think.
Right. And well, first of all, bless you for saying people who are a little older.
A little
I
older,
appreciate
not
it.
much
Right,
older.
Exactly, right.
A few years.
And I always, I'm very careful with my words in general because that's what I do. But I always say, older, not old.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
It's all relative.
It's all relative.
Right. But to your point, Harris, I remember 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, I was editor-publisher of a magazine called Video, which was actually the first newsstand magazine when VCRs came out to talk about the whole video thing.
Okay, yeah.
And MTV was big at the time. It was the new rage, and it was a phenomenon.
Yep.
And I remember, similarly to what you just said, saying there's going to come a time, and I guess we're now in that time, like with your generation, for example, where young people will say, "You used to actually just listen to music, you mean?
Right.
And you didn't see anything? How could
Yeah.
you do that?"
No, absolutely. And well, what I think is fascinating about that is back, even just 1 or 2 decades ago, you had things like that where a new, an MTV would launch, and that
Right.
was a huge deal. And
Right.
it's still to this day, is a
Right.
big moment in the music industry and in
Right.
the TV
Right.
industry. But now those moments are coming so quick.
Right.
We're getting a new social network every few months, and we're getting a new technology in a social network every few months. So those big moments
Right.
in media are coming so quickly. You're getting
Yes, right.
you're
No, you're
getting
right.
you're getting
It's-
new
yeah.
things all the time. I mean,
Right.
Facebook will put out a new update or a new technology, every 6 months, and
Right.
with all the other social networks, you're
Right.
just getting so much faster a flow of those technologies.
Right, and it's just one endless continuum.
It is.
Right. It doesn't
Yeah, it never
start and
ends.
stop anywhere.
Nope.
It's just endless.
Absolutely.
It's almost like
there's
an
no
endless-
if anyone ever tells you that they know everything about social media, they're lying,
Right.
because it's impossible.
Well, right.
I
That-
mean, while we
right.
were sitting here right now, while I'm not connected to anything, there was probably a new social network that launched, or
Right,
a
right.
new type of technology that sort of came about and is now being used in a different way. So there's really no one who knows everything about social
Right, and
media.
that's-
It's about grasping it as a whole.
And that's a great point. Or another way of putting what you just said is, if anybody ever tells you that they know anything about social media, they
Everything.
just demonstrate
Yeah.
that they just demonstrate that they don't.
Right, exactly.
By saying
if you
that,
say
yeah.
that you know everything, you're probably not the right person to be talking to.
Right, no,
it's
you're right.
impossible.
Right. That's a great point. And so you didn't study it at the University of
I did not
Hartford,
study it.
but I imagine that you and your friends, classmates, et cetera, were constantly on social media.
Yeah,
during-
it's funny. Looking back now at college, I have a lot of trouble grasping how much social media we used at that point.
Right.
I do remember, senior year, for instance, if we had, our thesis project or whatever, we did not use social media at that time. At that moment, when I graduated 2010, I had a big project, senior year. I don't remember thinking, oh, what's our Twitter strategy or what's our Facebook strategy for this company?
Right.
So I definitely don't remember that moment, but we started to understand its influence definitely in college, but being in the performing arts field, I was really going for something in music, and music sort of became aligned with social media for me. That's sort of how I broke into it. So it's kind of
Okay,
interesting.
that's an interesting entry point.
Yeah,
so to
yeah. I
speak.
mean,
Yeah, it's
that was sort of my entryway.
So
in.
it's not necessarily, and this is a good point maybe to not only make but explore a little bit. So it's not only social media for social media's sake.
No, of course not. Yeah.
It's not an end in itself. It's a means to an
Exactly.
end. Right?
Social media has to make sense.
Right.
Like we were talking about, if a business will come to me and they'll say, I just heard that Pinterest came out. I need to get on Pinterest. Not every social network makes sense for every business or every person.
Right.
I mean, you have to use the networks that make sense to you and your business.
Right.
Being on every network for the sake of being on every network doesn't make sense. It's
Right.
just, no one has enough time. I mean, even me, you don't have even if you're doing social media 24 hours a day, you don't have enough time to be on every network.
Right.
You have to pick and choose your battles. And, that's something that people are becoming more and more familiar with, the ability to pick those battles.
Right. No, that's a great point. And when you were saying that you had trouble grasping how much time you spent on social media, or at least your crowd.
Yeah.
Well, I have trouble grasping how much beer my fraternity brothers drank when I was in college. And actually, it's funny because I was not at all a beer drinker in college. I only recently came to appreciate craft beer.
Yep.
And one reason I wanted to mention that is so we can just at least touch on the fact that you have other interests, other business interests
Yeah.
actually, one of which is craft beer.
Yeah,
right?
I'm involved in a company called #Freedom Craft Brewery. There is a hashtag in our name, which is a little bit crazy. Just a number sign placed before the freedom. It's a way that we're trying to connect with the social media generation. But we're located in Buchanan, and we're going to have beer for sale by September.
Right.
That's our plan.
Wow.
And I'm running marketing for it, and we're trying to come up with new and innovative ways to use social media. There's every beer company spends, tons of money trying to figure
Right.
out how to sort of engage their customers in the right way. We're trying to do it in a new way, and a few ways that really haven't been done before.
So it's sort of like the chicken or egg. Which came first, the social media interest, and then you decided craft beer might be a good way, because obviously there is a boomlet in
Yeah,
craft beer.
absolutely.
Or
The beer definitely came first.
Right. I
in
mean,
this-
are you
in
a
this-
beer drinker?
I'm actually not a beer drinker.
Okay,
This fascinates.
right.
This like sort of intrigues people, I guess. But I love marketing, and I
Okay.
feel that like if I'm brought a product, I love looking at it and figuring out how I would market it. In this case, it happens to be a product that I don't enjoy myself.
Right.
I'm not a beer drinker.
And maybe
I never
that's just
have
as
been.
well. Maybe
yeah.
that's even
I mean,
better.
I do drink, but I don't drink beer, and it's just not my personal for me flavor wise
right.
doesn't do it for
Right.
me. But looking at beer from the marketing perspective and understanding why certain beers are great, and for us handcrafting every part of it, and using all American ingredients, those things are things that not every company looks at, and we are. So being able to look at a product that you don't use and don't necessarily enjoy is something that's
Oh no, I think that's great. I
Yeah,
think it's
it's,
because it allows you to be coolly objective about it.
Right.
You're not going to get emotional about
Exactly,
it,
exactly.
or and your views are not going to be skewed, really,
Exactly.
right? Because you don't care.
Well,
You're sort of indifferent.
it's not that I don't care,
No,
it's
no,
that
I
I
don't mean you
don't- yeah,
Right, I
from
didn't
a-
mean
yeah.
that.
No,
I meant
no,
you're
no, but-
indifferent to the the product in terms of consuming it
Right,
yourself.
exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, and who knows? There might be a point where I get to the brewmaster for the brewery, Barry. He has told me repeatedly that he will eventually find a beer for me that I like to drink.
Right.
Something that I can enjoy. I'm a little skeptical of his, his ability to find one, but we'll see. I mean, he says that there's a beer out there that everyone can enjoy, and maybe he'll be the one to make it. So.
It's interesting too, just on that particular topic for another moment, that in this region, there really seems to be a growing,
It's huge.
fascination on the business level and on startup businesses
Yeah.
like yours with microbrew. I mean, Captain Lawrence is the most
Yep.
prominent example, of
Yeah.
course. But I know other young people like you who are getting into
Absolutely.
the craft beer industry.
in this area is a really big thing.
And why do you think that is? I mean, why the geocentric?
I think it has to do with a lot of things. I mean, it's everything from where the money is, and all of those things. I think people in this area enjoy new things. They enjoy when sort of things come in. And I mean, I would almost say that Peekskill started it. I mean, this area was really
I think it's true.
influential in it.
Right.
Captain Lawrence obviously did an amazing job.
They started in Pleasantville, then went to Elmsford,
making
yeah.
craft beer, sort of right here in this area. But Birdsall House did an amazing job of bringing in craft beer
Yes,
to this area. And now
absolutely,
Peekskill
yes.
Brewery, so this area really had a lot to do with it. And I think now you're seeing, which is something that fascinates me, you're seeing local convenience stores, tiny little shops.
Right.
They have less and less Budweiser cans and more, say Captain Lawrence bottles. So
Yes.
it's a very interesting shift.
Yes, yeah.
Everyone wants craft beer. No matter what restaurant you are, or whatever type of business you have,
Right.
you want to serve craft beer because you understand the implications of it.
Well, it's almost like the new wine
Yes,
in a
absolutely.
sense, right? And
Yeah.
again, in my own case and experience and taste buds, I never really had an affinity for drinking beer. I think until the craft beers came along, and the flavors are more interesting to me.
They are.
I never had any taste for generic beer, basically. So.
I think a lot of people share that.
Right. Yeah. And so, but in a larger picture, talking about your beer business and your social media business, which is called Think Social, it seems your generation is really driving a paradigm shift in the workplace and the workplace culture and in everything relating to that, careers.
Yep.
The whole notion of a job and what that is. And so we have two things, at least in your case, that you're delving into, as a career,
Yep.
right? And so do you find that among your peers that also it tends to be the case more often than not, where they're not quite as interested
Yes.
in working for a 9-to-5, so
Yes.
to speak, company? And
Every person I know who's around my age is they have a job.
your age
they
is just
I'm 25.
Okay, 25.
So millennials, we identify as millennials. But I think every person I know who's my age or around my age, within say 5 years, is doing at least two things. Whether they work for a company and they write a blog on the side, or whether they, in my case, work for, do social media consulting, and also I'm starting a beer company. Everyone is interested in more than one thing. No one is just working at their 9 to 5 and then going home and then going back to their 9 to 5. Everyone is interested in sort of what else they can do.
Right.
Whether it's starting another company or designing an app or designing a new website. They're all interested in finding something else that will sort of stimulate them creatively.
Right.
I think that's a very big thing now for my generation.
Right. So your generation, it would seem, on that basis, really is taking to heart the maxim that unfortunately not enough people probably are able to follow or choose to follow or fall into, which is do what you love.
Exactly.
Right. It's
absolutely.
I mean, that's what if you want to,
yeah,
let's say, quote unquote, have a happy life in
Yep.
in a general sense, like do what you love.
Yeah. I mean,
So work should be pleasure.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and that's the way, and again, this, not even from a social media perspective, but just from a general life perspective.
Yes.
I think
right.
millennials view work as something that has to fit into their lives.
Right.
As opposed to the other way around.
Which I think is great.
Yeah.
I mean that's,
it's, it's something that we don't view it as we go to work for a company
Right.
and we plan to be there for the next 30 years.
Right.
I don't know anyone, no one I know is looking at the current job they're in and saying, oh yeah, when I'm 50 or 40, I'll be still in this job. No
Right,
one views
right,
it like that.
right.
They view it as, this is a great job, but what's that next step?
Right.
Or, what can I do next? What is
Right.
is there another field I'm interested in? I know so many people who have switched fields or shifted fields or, gone from, sort of one thing to another thing.
Right.
And that's a really great thing, I think. We're really, we're becoming sort of knowledgeable about a lot of different industries, which
Right.
is great.
And as my occasional co-host, Frank J. Rich, who blogs and writes a column himself on business called ROI, likes to say, and he has a lot of insight and wisdom about these things that I like to pick up on, and that is, it shouldn't be a job, it should be an opportunity.
Absolutely.
If you're thinking of it just as a job already, you're on the wrong track.
Absolutely.
Right? That's not the way it should be. But another thing that's changed is, getting back to social media, people today, during the daytime, depending on whether they're at a job or not, or at an opportunity or not, that they'll be on, let's say, Facebook,
Yep.
telling everybody what they just did, no matter how interesting it may be or not, to other people. But in the past, the analog would be, and of course it's totally implausible and impractical, people didn't sit around and write letters all day to
Right.
each other, which was social at that time. So would you say social media is actually, I guess this is a rhetorical question to some extent, but it's changing human behavior.
It is.
It's
Definitely
not just,
changing
It's
human
not just a pastime.
It's
It's
the way
not
we
just an
interact.
avocation. It's changing who we are.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's interesting. Like things, I know this is going to sound silly, but things like, you go out, you go to a bar and, you meet someone. When you friend request them on Facebook is a thing now. You think about it. People, of a certain age will actually process that. They say, oh, am I friend requesting them too soon? Or like, is it the right
Right.
time to do that? Those are things that people actually
Yes,
think about.
yes.
Which is
Etiquette.
something
It's
that,
social
it's social media etiquette.
right,
But,
right.
what you said before is very interesting. If you Google search about how to set up your HR policy,
Right.
about social media, or how to set up your company-wide policy about how employees can use social media, you will find hundreds of articles about it. Everyone has different takes on it,
Right.
and whether tweeting in the workplace is a good thing or a bad thing, and
Right.
whether their employees should be allowed to be on Facebook, or whether Facebook should be blocked on the company computers. There's so many different
Right.
ways takes
to
on
yes,
that.
right.
And I think and there's been waves too. There was a point where it was like block everything. We're going to block everything, and
Right.
that's it.
Yes, right.
Then there was a wave that came back, and they said, you know what? Talk about everything. Let's
Right.
let's have an open conversation. Now it's sort of come to a place where companies understand that if their employee is talking about them positively on social networking, that's a great thing for them. That's free advertising. That's
Right.
free
Yes. Right.
plugs for their business. So it's just a matter of controlling that conversation, just knowing what's going on.
Right.
You obviously don't want to censor your employees, but being able to have a open dialogue about it now, where it's
Right.
don't be on Facebook all the time, but if you need to check your Facebook statuses and you want to post
Right.
something, companies are now being more and more open to that.
Right. Well, the thing about social media, because I love to play with words, like the way some other people maybe play with baseballs,
Yep.
but I love to play with words. And so, to me, the shorthand for social media, which has its own profundity, is S-O, me. And social media is so me,
Yep.
because it's people talking about themselves.
Exactly.
Again, down to, details and even sort of ephemera that other people might look and go, oh, okay, I don't know why you posted it, but that's okay.
Yep.
But let's talk about social media and business, where a lot of the things you just said, businesses will look at social media, unfortunately, only as so me.
Yep.
And not so them.
That's the
and
first
how
thing.
and how it could help their business.
That's
right?
the first thing business owners will say is,
Right.
what am I going to talk about? Like, no one wants to know, the personal item that everyone says is, no one wants to see, when I'm taking a shower or when I'm eating for breakfast. No one wants to see that. If that's all you think of when you think of social media, then, there's probably something just a little bit, you're not looking at it from the right scope.
Right.
From a business perspective, I think businesses are losing so much revenue and so much
Opportunities,
opportunity.
sales,
There's
yes,
so
right,
many
right.
things that they're missing by not being on social media.
Right.
Businesses have there's so many opportunities out there.
Right.
Again, it's about finding the right networks. It's about finding the networks that make sense for you.
Right.
And then it's about using them the right way. Not being spammy. There's
Right.
we were discussing, there's a tone that you need to set with social media. You can't treat social media the way you would treat a billboard.
Right.
On the highway, or the way you would treat a banner ad on a website.
Right.
It's a different thing.
Right.
And the companies that really get that are doing an amazing job with it.
Right.
They're understanding that their social media presence and their voice, the brand voice on social media,
Right.
has to be unique, and it
Yes,
has to be
right,
different. It has to
right.
be something that people want to go check out what your favorite brand's Facebook page is saying.
Right.
So the brands that are getting that and the brands that are doing that properly are the ones that are succeeding in social media. And there's a big gap between companies that are getting it and companies that aren't getting it.
Right, and what comes to my mind, because of the generation I hail from, are you familiar with the name Marshall McLuhan?
I'm not.
Yeah, because he was current in the 60s, pretty much. But Marshall McLuhan was, at that time, a very well-known, actually professor, I think he was at the University of Toronto, I believe, who coined this, really an epigram, the medium is the message. He wrote a book, and I still have his books. The medium is the message, and he was talking at that time about television, basically saying it's television that people are pulled to, almost regardless of what's on it.
Right.
The content is almost incidental to the medium,
Right.
is the point. And what you just said about social media and advertising, for me, conjures Marshall McLuhan's name and his message, which is it's the context. It's not just
Exactly.
the content, it's
Exactly.
the context.
Exactly.
And as you're saying, it's changing dramatically, advertising, but Main Street businesses, and Frank J. Rich and I just recently talked about this, our company, Chase Media Group, is a multimedia company, and we of course publish the Penny Saver, which has been around 55 years, but we also are now involved in all of the leading edge media
Right.
opportunities
And you have to be.
for our customers,
Yeah.
right? And as you say, it is a challenge to get especially Main Street businesses to the point where they can appreciate and value. Social media is not just about what somebody is doing today
Right.
with their kids or whatever,
Right.
tooling around in their car, going shopping. Yeah, and believe me, I include myself. Like, I'll post stuff and I'll say, I don't know why I'm posting this, and
Yeah.
somebody's going to think this guy's a jerk. And that's that's the risk I guess you take is not always knowing if the post
Yeah.
is appropriate, in terms of a mass audience. Or
Right.
not.
Right. I think businesses have to look at it like if I'm okay with whatever I'm about to post being the headline of the New York Times on the front page, then you're good.
That's it. Well, that's
you
it.
gotta
That's
have
good.
a filter. You
Right.
gotta understand that there are things, and companies have gotten in a lot of trouble for
Right.
posting things that were blatantly offensive to
Oh,
people.
yeah, no,
and
right. And
they've
then-
gotten in a lot of trouble
Right,
for
right.
it. So you have to look at people a lot of times, and especially small businesses. This is the most common thing in the world. They say, oh, you know what, my niece or nephew, they're going to handle my social media. Or, my little sister, she's going to handle social media
Yes.
for the company. But you have to understand that once you get to a certain point, the things you say on social media are just as important and impactful on your business as, a newspaper article written about you
Right.
or a bad review online or,
Maybe
those things.
probably more so
Yeah,
because
more
of the
so.
number of people who see it and
Exactly.
because of to the extent to which it's shared.
Exactly.
You know,
so you have to have that filter, and you have to understand that just because it's social media and you think your audience may or may not be on there doesn't mean you shouldn't give it your your full attention.
Right. It's not anything goes.
Right.
You have to control the message
Exactly.
and control the distribution of it.
Exactly.
of it,
You have to
basically.
understand
Right.
who's on
Right.
there, and you have to understand the importance of it.
Right. And without going into details, social media as a tool for customer service is something that I benefited from when I won't even mention the chain.
Yeah.
But I bought something. I went to return it with the receipt. I was told, "Oh no, you also need the packaging," and I said, "Oh, come on!" And they said, "Well, then you need to call corporate." I called corporate and didn't really get anywhere. I don't
Went in
even
circles.
Right. I didn't even think I ever got to a prompt that said, "For customer service, press 3."
Right.
And then on their website, I saw, like us on Facebook. Went to Facebook, posted, in a very nice way. I didn't want to embarrass them. Things
Yeah.
happen. I posted what my problem was in returning it, and it was taken care of that day through social media.
That's social media working.
Right.
And one of the things that people love about social media is that it eliminates the barriers. There are
Right.
no barriers in social media.
Right.
Sure, yeah, companies have teams and actors have, their PR people handle
Right.
it sometimes, but when you tweet or you send a post on Facebook to a company,
Right.
they can read it. They
Right,
have the
right.
ability to read it. If you went out and found your favorite actor and you sent him a tweet, he can read it. I mean,
Right.
whether he does or not is another story,
Right.
but he has the ability to read it. So
Right.
that's what people love about social media, and that's
Right.
why social media is so impactful.
Right.
No one can stop me, just like, if a company doesn't want to put their phone number out there, right?
Right.
They're stopping me. They're, not letting me contact them directly. Social media doesn't have that barrier.
Right.
I can go
Right.
right out and I can contact the company I want to contact, and no one can really
Right.
say anything about it. So, that's really why social media works so well.
And in fact, we run cartoons every week, topical cartoons in the Penny Saver, and one of them recently, exactly to your point, Harris, was showing like in the old days, a young kid like me, admiring a baseball card of Mickey Mantle, and he's my hero, Mickey
Right.
Mantle, and but at a great distance, and then the next panel in the cartoon was today, and a kid tweeting A-Rod about what he thought of him, which wasn't positive, but
Yep.
and he's saying, look at the difference
Right.
in, like you just said,
That's
I can
exactly
tweet
right.
A-Rod,
That's a great example.
I can tweet a superstar directly and tell him what I think of him,
Exactly.
good or bad. Right.
Yeah, no, and that line of communication happens. There was a great story about a player for the Oklahoma City Thunder, a
Yes,
basketball
right,
player.
right.
And there was a great story. This is like one of my favorite
Right.
social
We
media
just have
stories
to
where
make it quick, but
yeah,
right,
no, but
right.
he basically went on Twitter and found a flag football game that some of
Right.
his fans were playing in, and he went and played. And it was just a great way to think
Yeah,
about
right.
social media.
Well,
that was a direct connection
It's like
that
a
happened.
flash crowd,
Yeah,
except it's a
exactly.
flash pickup game, I guess,
Exactly.
right?
But that
Right.
whole experience doesn't happen without social media.
Right. Well, listen, this seems like it went by in about 2 minutes because it's such a great topic, and you're great to talk to about social media, so I really appreciate
Yeah, absolutely. I
coming
appreciate you
on.
having me on.
Oh, yeah, and, well, I mean, a different show I'll have on and talk about the craft beer business,
Yeah.
because that's interesting,
Absolutely.
too. Yeah.
We gotta-
And so
we
I
have a
guess
lot to
the
talk
moral,
about.
Right, the moral of the story today is for Main Street businesses, social media is going to get you more business. There's no question about it.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, Harris, thanks very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for watching, and remember, when Bruce the Blog listens, people talk. Thanks. Yeah, that went really well.
Yeah.
Great.